like being carried out on a stretcher with the press vest that they used to wear put on top of their lifeless body. And it's fucking insane. Yeah, killed alongside their families, by the way. Israel has round-the-clock surveillance. They know the targets that they're striking. Israel knows where these people live. They have the capacity to call them. Open air. All right, let's watch this GDF video. Piers Morgan is wrong.
I'm going to try and wrestle things back. Jen, let me ask you a question. You mentioned genocide there. What Hamas is actually in its charter dedicated to doing is the purest personification of genocide. Well, it is. They want to see the eradication of Israel, and they proved on October the 7th they will kill as many Jews as they can possibly get their hands on. So that is pure genocide. What Israel is doing in return, I don't think meets the category of genocide. Right, because they don't want to get rid of every Palestinian. They don't want to kill every Palestinian. No, they want to kill every Hamas terrorist. Now,
it only takes mere seconds to introduce a sentence, to millions of people, mind you, that contains numerous presuppositions that are faulty. Setting aside the fact that Hamas rarely invokes the Charter, according to a 2009 report from the United States Institute of Peace, a federal institution, which read, "The Charter itself contains statements that reflect a lack of hostility toward Jews on the basis of religion. For example, as Article 31 states, under Islam, the followers of the three religions, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, may coexist peacefully and safely. Whether or not one accepts this statement as true, it is incompatible with claims of a religious obligation to kill Jews." Regardless, the report also states that Hamas has, in practice, moved well beyond its charter. Hamas has been carefully and consciously adjusting its political program for years and has sent repeated signals that it may be ready to begin a process of coexisting with Israel. Further, Hamas leader Khaled Meshal urged outsiders to ignore the Hamas charter. In 2017, Hamas revised its charter altogether. According to the RAND Corporation, the major defense think tank, Hamas dropped the language explicitly calling for Israel's destruction, which suggests an effort by...
It's always funny when, like, the best... the absolute best information that you can get, some of the most reliable information you can get, is from objectively biased sources that are vestiges of the American empire. Okay? Straight up. Like, this is why half of OSINT Twitter is like insane war perverts. Okay? And it's so funny. Like, it's not that hard. You could just go to the Washington Institute or the RAND Corporation and search this shit. And they will tell you. They will literally just straight up tell you. Obviously, they'll season it or they'll message it in a way where it'll be like, they'll message it in a way where it'll be like obviously biased, but still, like, you can find this information.
By Hamas to portray itself as more of an Islamic national liberation movement. Setting aside the fact that Hamas took hostages, evidently not killing every Jew that they could get their hands on, and that some of the dead were reportedly killed by the Israeli military, according to an article from the Israeli Yedioth Ahronoth, after the pilots realized that it was very difficult to distinguish between terrorists and Israeli soldiers or civilians, the decision was made that the first objective of the fighter helicopters is to stop the deluge of terrorists. 28 fighter helicopters shot over the course of the day all of the ammunition in their bellies. We are talking about hundreds of 30mm cannon mortars and Hellfire missiles. The frequency of fire at the thousands of terrorists was enormous at the start, and only at a certain point did the pilots begin to slow their attacks and carefully choose the targets. According to the Air Force, in the first 4 hours from the start of the battles, helicopters and fighter craft attacked about 300 targets, most in Israeli territory.
Wait, what? Non-profit but for profit. They're a dishonest company which reaps the benefits of non-profit. So they aren't sorry for their charter or their message. They're just sorry the rest of the world didn't like the wording. So they'll say it without writing it next time. Brother, I don't know if you know this, but political organizations oftentimes rebrand. They always engage in violent actions as a constant, but oftentimes they will retriangulate their message. I don't know if you know that. An example of a political organization that is like retriangulated its messaging would be probably Likud. some of the original doctrines have remained. I mean, when you even consider the PLO or the Palestinian Authority, these were originally considered terror cells. Like, they're comprised of people who were also terrorists. Same with the ANC. Same with Nelson Mandela. Throughout time, organizations have the capacity to shift. This does not mean that, like, they're talking about OpenAI. No, I don't think he's talking about OpenAI. I think he's talking about the new Hamas charter.
They explain in these articles that what they saw at the beginning of this air operation was complete chaos. And in fact, here reported by Haaretz, a journalist on X, who says that this 48-year-old man that we see in this picture.
What? I fucking said this and you denied it? You literally said anyone who said Israel killed its own citizens was anti-Semitic? No. I said it is ridiculous to claim and copium, and I still say this, to engage in any kind of like fucking, to engage in any kind of fucking rhetoric that automatically, one, tries to act like the overwhelming majority of people killed were not civilians, and two, to act like Israel was responsible primarily for killing the most Israeli civilians. I still maintain that position. Okay? I did not say it's anti-Semitic to say that Israel killed its own citizens. I don't think that, I don't know how you inferred that. I, as a matter of fact, did say Israel most likely did kill some of its own civilians. And in that process, we had limited evidence at the time. Some of the evidence came from Yasmin Parat from one of the kibbutz who had escaped the concert, who had said that tank artilleries and crossfire could have led to civilians dying in one of the kibbutzim. And I also said, and I also did say that even the helicopters could have potentially killed some of the Israeli civilians that were most likely held hostage by, that were in the cars alongside Hamas militants. Okay? But this does not change the reality that there are still hundreds, okay, hundreds of civilians being indiscriminately fired at by multiple different Palestinian militants. That is the truth. So that doesn't change that reality, and I want everyone to still personally understand it. That is the reality. I'm, of course, going to be very cautious in my reporting, especially when I know I got vultures at bay waiting for anything that they can clip out of context. Okay? There aren't the very same vultures on the pro-Palestinian side, because the pro-Palestinian side is obviously very charitable and understanding of my position. Okay? But there are, however, vultures on the side of no politics, really, but I guess you could ostensibly fill them under the category of Zionist Hasbara propaganda that are waiting for anything and everything they can to specifically clip out of context and say, "We got him, boys. He's lying."
Was killed by the IDF after being mistakenly identified as a terrorist.
Setting all that aside, Piers shows a fundamental lack of understanding of what genocide is. Perhaps this is an opportunity for others to learn as well. As the war grinds on, the IDF has been on a full-blown media assault. And as the humanitarian crisis worsens, it is of the utmost importance that we all have access to unbiased sources. I've been using this app and website by Ground News, and it's become my go-to resource to get the full picture. This article recently caught my attention. UN urges international probe into Israel-Hamas war violations. More than 50 articles were published on this in the last 2 days, and coverage is coming mainly from left-leaning sources. In fact, looking closer, I noticed the headlines differ based on politics. Coverage from the left emphasizes immediate possibility of starvation and a dire crisis, while on the right, headlines paint a less dire picture. It's interesting to look at the news this way, where a single word or phrase has the ability to shape public opinion. I've been following their timeline on the Israel-Palestine conflict to see how media coverage differs depending on political affiliation. I think what Ground News is doing is really important, and I encourage you to check it out. Go to ground.news/GDF, subscribe through my link for less than $1 a month, or take advantage of their biggest discount of the year, 40% off their Vantage plan for unlimited access.
Just to reply to these people's points, didn't Haaretz also confirm that the IDF killed a lot of civilians? No, they did not confirm that they killed a lot of civilians. The IDF, according to Haaretz reporting, the latest reporting on October 7th, they believe that the helicopter fire also potentially led to some Israeli civilians dying. They did not say how many Israeli civilians were killed by the attack helicopters. They simply said some of the Israeli civilians may have been killed by attack helicopters. Okay?
Which is what I have. Get access to data-driven
Stop trying to make ethical reacts as a phrase happen. I mean, I'm memeing.
information and support my channel in the meantime.
Why would the IDF ever admit that they killed a lot of Israeli civilians? They would not. They did not even admit to killing a single Israeli civilian, as a matter of fact. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the IDF admits. I don't trust the IDF as far as I can throw them. I don't trust the IDF at all. I do, however, trust journalists, journalists that write for a multitude of different Israeli publications that aren't the psychopathic ultra-Zionists that many assume them to be. They're not. They're still journalists. They might even be Zionist journalists who might even be biased towards Israel, who will still report truthfully because ultimately their position is to ensure that the victims and their family members learn about how their family members died. Okay?
Embrace them and believe them. You must remember what Amalek has done to you, says our Holy Bible, and we do remember and we are fighting.
Making the case that Israel is committing genocide is quite simple, as explained by Craig McIver, who made headlines for resigning from the United Nations. McIver was the director of the New York office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights.
Usually the most difficult part of proving genocide is intent. In this case, the intent by Israeli leaders has been so explicitly stated and publicly stated by the Prime Minister.
For the record, like using Judaism as a coded way of like saying you want to do ethnic cleansing is not necessarily new for Israel. It played a prominent role in the inception of the Israeli state. During planned Dalit. So, you know, that is the modus operandi here, or at least I guess a return to tradition in that of sorts.
The president, by senior cabinet ministers, by military leaders.
During the
that is an easy case to make. It's on the public record.
The day of the October 7th Hamas attack, Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the people of Israel.
לטהר את היישובים מהמחבלים שחדרו פנימה. הפעולה הזאת מתבצעת בשעות הללו. האויב ישלם מחיר שהוא לא ידע כמותו.
Later that day, Israeli Energy Minister Israel Katz announced that Israel would shut off all electricity to Gaza, followed by, "What was will not be." We'll remember that it was on October 9th when Defense Minister Yoav Gallant announced,
"No food, no water, no gas, it's all closed. We're fighting animals and are acting accordingly."
Just days later, he told troops. Of course, we remembered that October 10th, IDF spokesman Daniel Hagari revealed that Israel had begun dropping hundreds of tons of bombs and that the emphasis is on damage and not accuracy. Later that day, Major General Ghassan Alian, head of the Coordinator of Government Activities in the Territories, explained,
سكان غزة بدل ما يصدمهم الإشي عم بيحتفلوا مع هيك وحوش بشرية رايحين نتعامل كيف لازم مش راح يكون في عندكم كهرباء ولا مي بس دمار بدكم جهنم راح تحصلوا على جهنم.
And Reservist General Giora Island wrote an article declaring that Gaza will become a place where no human being can exist. When asked about the ensuing humanitarian situation in Gaza, Israel's President Isaac Herzog stated,
"It's an entire nation out there that is responsible."
I sent these remarks to genocide scholar Martin Shaw of the University of Sussex, who said the comment shows a genocidal mentality, and genocide scholar Mark Levine of the University of Southampton, who suggested that the comment was the Israeli government alibi for treating everybody in Gaza as if they are Hamas. Mass murder is thereby legitimated. Herzog was pressed about the comment further.
You seem to hold the people of Gaza, the civilians of Gaza, responsible. That makes them legitimate targets.
No, I didn't say that.
Yoav Gallant has been slightly more unapologetic. A month later, amid growing tensions with Lebanon, he revealed,
"It is the citizens of Lebanon that will pay the price of these kinds of mistakes. What we are doing in Gaza, we can do in Beirut."
It's fair to say that the Israeli officials have been mouthy. It's hard to explain just how significant comments like these are. In the trial judgment for the case against Jean-Paul Akiyezu during the Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, the chamber considers that intent is a mental factor which is difficult, even impossible to determine. This is the reason why, in the absence of a confession from the accused, his intent can be inferred from a certain number of presumptions of fact. Factors such as the scale of atrocities committed, or furthermore deliberately and systematically targeting victims on account of their membership of a particular group, can enable the chamber to infer the genocidal intent of a particular act. So there's a case to be made that even absent these statements, we could infer genocidal intent. Continuing with the Akiyezu trial judgment, in a section regarding one of the Genocide Convention's core tenets, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, which the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda found should be construed as the methods of destruction by which the perpetrator does not immediately kill the members of the group, but which ultimately seek their physical destruction. The chamber is of the opinion that the means of deliberate inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part include, inter alia, subjecting a group of people to a subsistence diet, systematic expulsion from homes, and the reduction of essential medical services below minimum requirement. We shouldn't have to explain just how Israel is self-evidently executing exactly every one of these criteria, but sadly we will now. Now, it should be known, before October 7th, Gazans were already on a subsistence diet. In 2012, Amira Haas wrote for Haaretz an article confirming the existence of a so-called Red Lines document, drafted by Ehud Olmert's cabinet in 2008, shortly after the beginning of the ongoing blockade. The Red Lines document calculates the minimum number of calories needed by every age and gender group in Gaza, then uses this to determine the quantity of staple foods that must be allowed into the strip every day, as well as the number of trucks needed to carry this quantity. On average, the minimum worked out to 2,279 calories per person per day. From this, they reduced the quantity of fruits and vegetables, milk, and meat and poultry. Echoing what attorney Dov Weissglass, a senior advisor to Olmert, said in 2006, the idea is to put the Palestinians on a diet, but not to make them die of hunger. Amira Haas continues, the drafters of the Red Lines document noted that the quantity of fruit and vegetables Gaza could produce for itself was expected to decline from 1,000 tons a day to 500 within a few months due to the Israeli ban on bringing in seeds, as well as the ban on exporting produce. They predicted a similar fate for the poultry industry, but they didn't propose any solution for this decline. Even with this generous allotment of calories, then Gaza director for the UN Relief and Works Agency, Robert Turner, complained, food imports consistently fell below the red lines. This trend continued. Before October 7th, 63% of the population was considered food insecure, according to the World Health Organization. This was with 500 trucks entering Gaza per day. Harvard economist Sarah Roy, considered the foremost expert on Gaza's economy, wrote in a recent editorial, there is a desperate need for basic resources in Gaza, including food. Despite this, the first aid convoys weren't allowed into Gaza until October 21st. According to the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, by November 7th, a total of 650 trucks had entered Gaza, or 36 trucks per day. Essential items such as rice, legumes, and vegetable oil have almost disappeared in the market, Wheat flour, eggs, and dairy products are no longer available in shops across Gaza. And by November 7th, the amount of drinking water entering Gaza could only serve 4% of the population. Not surprisingly, there have been a growing number of reports indicating that people are drinking seawater and contaminated water from agricultural wells. Roy concludes that Gaza is approaching a state of total collapse, and this collapse is undeniably one of choice. The Associated Press painted a grueling picture of the situation on the ground for families searching for food. Supermarket shelves are nearly empty. Bakeries have shut down because of lack of flour and fuel for the ovens. Gaza's farmland is almost inaccessible, and there's
also the bakeries that didn't shut down, that were forcibly shut down with rockets.
Little in produce markets beyond onions and oranges. Families cook lentils over small fires in the streets. You hear children crying in the night for sweets and hot food, said Ahmed Khan, a photographer at a shelter in the southern town of Rafah. I can't sleep. Many people say they've gone weeks without meat, eggs, or milk, and now live on one meal a day. There is a real threat of malnutrition and people starving, said Ali Zaki, spokesperson for the UN's World Food Program. What aid workers call food insecurity is the new baseline for Gaza's 2.3 million people. According to OCHA, or the UN Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, on November 4th and 5th, 7 water facilities across the Gaza Strip were directly hit and sustained major damage, including 3 sewage pipelines in Gaza City, 2 water reservoirs in Gaza City, Rafah, and Jabalia refugee camp, and 2 water wells in Rafah. The Gaza municipality warned about the imminent risk of sewage flooding. Indeed, the targeting of water infrastructure prompted Euromed to describe Israel's campaign as a war of starvation. The Israeli war of starvation has taken very dangerous turns, including cutting off all food.
To be fair, a lot of these guys are also Hamas, so, and even if that's not the case, I will just simply say it as it is. See, ambulances, Hamas.
Supplies to the northern half and bombing and destroying factories, bakeries, food stores, water stations, and tanks throughout the entire enclave. Prior to the ongoing Israeli war, 70% of the Gaza Strip's children suffered from varying health issues, including malnutrition, anemia, and weakened immunity. However, Euromed Monitor said the number has increased to over 90% as a result of the unprecedented Israeli attacks. Strikingly, before October 7th, when 97% of water was unfit for human consumption, since then, there is 92% less water consumption. Further, the only mill in Gaza able to grind wheat is not working, due to a lack of electricity and fuel. 11 bakeries have been hit and destroyed since October 7th. But as UN Relief and Works Agency Gaza Affairs Director Thomas White noted, people are beyond looking for bread. It's looking for water. In terms of systematic expulsion from homes, on October 13th, Israel ordered residents north of Wadi Gaza, a river and wetland, numbering 1.1 million people to evacuate to the south of the Strip. After which Michael Schmidt, a scholar of the Lieber Institute at West Point Military Academy, opined, I struggle to see how warnings that Gaza City is about to be attacked and civilians should leave can be characterized as anything other than actions designed to minimize loss of life and injury. Which spurred a rebuttal from Yusuf Syed Khan, a senior lawyer at Global Rights Compliance, who wrote, giving effect to an order to displace through acts of coercion in such a context might include the IDF's repeatedly using the word must to communicate and qualify the parameters of both the insistence upon evacuation and possible return, as well as relentless attacks against civilians or civilian infrastructure, including schools and hospitals, coupled with the complete denial of humanitarian aid, which may be said to render life uninhabitable in a certain area. Further, Israel's Energy Minister Israel Katz made it clear when he said, all the civilian population in Gaza is ordered to leave immediately. We will win. They will not receive a drop of water or a single battery until they leave the world.
Yeah, meanwhile, according to NPR 5 days ago, more than 200 medical personnel have been killed since the war started. Their colleagues say there's been no time to mourn. In that spirit, doctors shared details about the lives that were lost. 60 journalists, I believe, or 50 journalists a couple days ago, 51 journalists a couple days ago, 4 in Israel, the rest, of course, 1 in Lebanon and the rest in Gaza. So, I mean, this video makes an undeniable case. Oh, the real life lore video, why Israel was originally attacked. Yeah, I heard real life lore did some banger videos.
Indeed, the
on this.
alternative to leaving was declared in no uncertain terms by Defense Minister Yoav Gallant.
Those who want to save...
It's crazy to think, like, there are journalists that I've been following since the beginning, or even before then, before October 7th, that are just now dead. I'm seeing them. I listen to their voices. I saw them communicate about what's going on the ground, and then a couple weeks later, you just see them dead, like being carried out on a stretcher with the press vest that they used to wear put on top of their lifeless body. And it's fucking insane. Yeah, killed alongside their families, by the way. Israel has round-the-clock surveillance. They know the targets that they're striking. Israel knows where these people live. They have the capacity to call them.
And by IDF leaflets and cell phone audio messages. Your presence north of Wadi Gaza puts your life in danger. Whoever chooses not to leave North Gaza to the south of Wadi Gaza might be identified as an...
You're in just as much danger as them being an on-the-ground reporter yourself. I love that we're slowly but surely uncovering steps of genocide and psychopathic edgelords with no will to live other than just like to carry on the tradition of trying to make everyone as miserable as themselves because their family doesn't invite them to Thanksgiving dinners and acts like they literally do not exist or that they have died. Come in here to try and fucking repeat idiotic things that I never even fucking said or meant. Everybody knows that I've never actually left and done on the ground reporting in fucking Palestine. But, you know, your goal in here is to just say stupid shit like this because if you don't get this message out and try to hope that you can change a person's life for a brief moment, have them like recognize that you're alive, you know what I mean? You might actually end it all. So I will provide that service for you for a brief moment, okay? It makes me happy to know that you will continue living and won't off yourself because absolutely zero people like you, and that you will continue this fucking train of just compounding on the hatred in your sad, miserable life. You can type in ha-ha-ha's in all caps, but we both know deep down inside you're crying because your soul is broken, okay? It's broken. You can fix it. You can fix it. And I hope you will, okay? I hope you will. But it does start. It does start with leaving the communities that you are in that are slowly but surely sucking you into this rabbit hole of despair. No, I'm not mad. I'm disappointed. Please don't ban me. No, I won't. Don't worry. Don't worry, little one. I will not ban you. I don't want you to off yourself, okay? I want you to change your life. I want you to be happy. Doing stuff like this, not going to help. It only makes your life worse. You might think that you are in a community that understands where you're coming from. You might think that you're in a community that understands where you're coming from, that gives you a sense of purpose. You know, this guy that you've never met before that you have been conditioned into fucking hating. Okay? Is mad in this moment, in this very moment. Like he got really mad. I got to him. You didn't. I've heard this uncreative sentiment expressed 1,000 times over. I want you to be better. Okay? I know I gave you exactly what you wanted. What you wanted wasn't a clip. What you wanted was someone to recognize you. Because it does feel like you have no friends sometimes. Especially when, you know, you feel like the walls are caving in and you're just like sitting there alone in your dark room hoping for someone to reach out. So I'm telling you. Okay? I'm telling you. Yes, Senpai noticed you. And now I'm telling you what to do. Quit the shit. Stop going on the fucking same drama farming, lolcow Discord servers. Stop engaging with the same fucking subreddits because that is only going to make you worse. One day you will recognize that you have a deep addiction Okay? The quicker you snap out of it and try to make something better of your life, the faster you will be happy and you won't turn into a fucking 47-year-old kissless virgin. Okay? I'm just cut the Celtics loss to the Hornets. All right.
Accomplice in a terrorist organization. And the destruction of homes and property ensured that there's nowhere for them to go back to. According to the UN, as of November 8th, at least 45% of homes in Gaza, not North Gaza, but all of Gaza, are either damaged or completely destroyed. In the trial judgment for Mladen Nedeljković and Vinko Martinović, the Criminal Tribunal for Yugoslavia interpreted that the deliberate destruction of homes was indicative of intent to forcibly displace civilians. When a genuine evacuation takes place, there is an obligation to bring the population back when the hostilities have ended. No attempts to return them were made. In fact, most of their houses were torched. With regard to bringing them...
Hasan is such a window warrior, self-proclaimed propagandist loser, fake socialist too. Smokey the Dab, I'm sorry that the words that I actually fucking said to the other guy hurt you so fucking deeply to your core that you had to respond in this way. But everything I said, and I think you know that as well, could be said specifically for you too. Okay? Goal is the same. Snap out of it. Go to the gym. Start a new life. I promise. I promise. Okay? I know I said something and it had an AoE impact on every fucking loser incel in a 7,000-mile vicinity. Okay? I know.
The population back, in the words of Israeli Minister of Foreign Affairs Eli Cohen. At the end of this war, not only will Hamas no longer be in Gaza, but the territory of Gaza will also decrease. Indeed, Francesca Albanese, Special Rapporteur for Human Rights in the Occupied Territories, warned that Palestine...
There's certainly a lot of people who are also on the I used to be a Hasan fan train as well. I had a much larger audience in different points in time when a lot of people would come in here and watch, especially during COVID, and were like kind of finding out what their perspective was, like what their political worldview looks like, right? They come in here, then they maybe hear something that they don't agree with where they're like, oh, well, I don't think this corresponds to my worldview, whether it's like something I've said, like, the fact that Walgreens CEOs are most likely lying about fucking mass retail theft being a major issue. Now, I've been vindicated on that, but it doesn't matter because if you were already, if you already had made up your mind about theft and you were like, oh, this guy personally thinks theft is fucking pog, right? You just go, all right, well, let me seek out if there's other people out there who are saying the opposite. And then they see people, there's plenty of content creators out there who will mislead you. You know what I mean? And they just go and they go, all right, well, this guy says fuck Hasan and I kind of don't agree with Hasan. Maybe he's right. I wasn't a hate watcher, but speculative, and I have to say, please stick around. Hasan is very well read, informative, and funny. I was a shell of the person I was in high school, and Hasan helped me rediscover my curious side and help me inform myself. If you hate him, at least give him a chance, and also check out the great learning resources he references. Aw, thank you. Yeah, I talk about so many divisive topics. It could be on anything: theft, gambling, sex workers, making fun of hogs, taxes, socialism, Bitcoin, NFT. There were moments over the course of many, many years where you could have picked up one issue that you thought was very important to you that you didn't agree with me on, and it shattered your world, and it made you very angry, and it caused you to not be charitable. And there's plenty of, God knows, there's plenty of content out there who will fucking owe me. Oh, trans topics is another very divisive one. You know? There's another very divisive one. And you're a pretty standard streamer, to be fair. I think so. Ukraine, American foreign policy. That's a big one for a lot of progressives. who can't shatter their worldview on that front. Impossible for them to do so. First, I started watching as a baby socialist left because I wanted to hear more black leftists, but eventually came back because his analysis still holds up after all this time. Yeah. Viewership is down, though, to be fair. No, everyone's viewership is down for sure, but mine is certainly more down than it's supposed to be at this time. I'm aware of it. I mean, but my favorite times on stream are when I'm on the weekends, when viewership is more down across the board than any other normal day of streaming. And it's my favorite time to stream because I have no like legitimate expectations. You know what I mean? I don't have any like weight. I don't have to carry around like a major burden. My friend's gonna watch you after Cuban G slur because they're defrogs. What, Gusano? Okay. Cuban G slur. What the fuck? It means worm, dog. It's like a political fucking take. It means counter-revolutionary. What makes it G slur? Like saying C slur. That is always funny when you got the N-word manifesto guy talking about slurs and how inappropriate it is while simultaneously advocating for the right to be able to say the N-word as a white guy. Yeah.
Are in grave danger of mass ethnic cleansing. The situation in the occupied Palestinian territory and Israel has reached fever pitch. Just days later, she and several other special rapporteurs, including the Special Rapporteur on Human Rights of Displaced Persons, warned a risk of genocide against the Palestinian people. At the end of October, a worrying so-called concept paper had circulated around social media, reportedly from the Israeli Ministry of Intelligence, detailing a plan to expel all of Gaza's population, 2.3 million people, into Egypt. The plan called for establishing tent cities in Egypt, creating a humanitarian corridor, then building cities in the northern Sinai to house the refugees for the long term, with a security zone to prevent Palestinians from returning to Gaza. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office played down the report compiled by the Intelligence Ministry as a hypothetical exercise. But, according to the New York Times, Israel has quietly tried to build international support in recent weeks for the transfer of several 100,000 civilians from Gaza to Egypt for the duration of its war in the territory, according to 6 senior foreign diplomats. Israeli leaders and diplomats have privately proposed the idea to several foreign governments, framing it as a humanitarian initiative that would allow civilians to temporarily escape the perils of Gaza for refugee camps in the Sinai Desert, just across the border in neighboring Egypt. Just one small problem, as described by the Criminal Tribunal for Yugoslavia in the appeal judgment for Milomir Stakic. Although displacement for humanitarian reasons is justifiable in certain situations, the appeals chamber agrees with the prosecution that it is not justifiable where the humanitarian crisis that caused the displacement is itself the result of the accused's own unlawful activity. With regard to Bosnian Muslims, the displacement was involuntary, and that, to the extent it had a humanitarian purpose, this was only because of a humanitarian crisis that the appellant himself had deliberately caused.
Oh shit, dude, it doesn't work that way. You can't just you can't simply say like, oh, well, we caused a humanitarian crisis and now people are leaving through the humanitarian corridor. Oh, that's called forcible displacement. Damn.
Finally, we have the reduction of essential medical services below minimum requirement. Well, Human Rights Watch on November 14th called for Israel to be investigated for war crimes. The Israeli military's repeated, apparently unlawful attacks on medical facilities, personnel, and transport are further destroying Gaza's healthcare system and should be investigated as war crimes. Hospitals have run out of medicine and basic equipment, and doctors told Human Rights Watch that they were forced to operate without anesthesia and to use vinegar as an antiseptic. Indeed, a doctor at Al-Aqsa Hospital told Human Rights Watch there is a huge shortage of medicines. No electricity, no diesel, no solar, no water to drink or to use. Human Rights Watch reminds us that the International Criminal Court's Rome Statute prohibits as a war crime intentionally directing attacks against medical units and transport. In a staggering example, the International Eye Hospital in Gaza City was hit 2 different times on 2 different days by what Human Rights Watch described as a large airdropped munition. The hospital posted on Facebook that the International Eye Hospital no longer exists. It has been completely destroyed. The Turkish-Palestinian Friendship Hospital, which housed the only specialized cancer treatment center in all of Gaza, was hit 2 nights in a row. The hospital shut down on November 1st because of the airstrikes and lack of fuel. Indeed, the WHO has reported on November 12th that premature and newborn babies on life support are reportedly dying due to power, oxygen, and water cuts at Al-Shifa Hospital. For those of you that don't know, Al-Shifa is the largest hospital in all of the Gaza Strip. Staff across a number of hospitals are reporting lack of fuel, water, and basic medical supplies, putting the lives of all patients at immediate risk. More than half of the hospitals in the Gaza Strip are closed. Those still functioning are under massive strain and can only provide very limited emergency services, life-saving surgery, and intensive care services. The WHO had also warned on November 8th that the current disease trends are very concerning. They report that before October 7th, reports of diarrhea were steady at 2,000 cases a month. Now, since mid-October 2023, over 33,000 cases of diarrhea have been reported. Over half of these are among children under age 5.
For people that think that it's funny, haha, diarrhea or whatever, in this situation, it's very deadly. It's not diarrhea because you had a bunch of tacos and you have access to water. If you don't have access to clean drinking water, it kills you through dehydration.
There's also scabies and lice, chickenpox, skin rash, and upper respiratory infections. Lack of medicine.
No one in the chat even made that joke. I'm just saying, there are people who think, oh, diarrhea,
for treating communicable diseases further increase the risk of accelerated disease spread. You see, it's simple. Just a simple gander at the bare facts lays out in clear terms the situation. When compared to the standards upheld time and time again in the criminal tribunals which convicted others of crimes against humanity and genocide, it begs the question, why doesn't the International Criminal Court issue arrest warrants for Yoav Gallant and Netanyahu and Israel Katz and others? It's not complicated, it's genocide. Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching, and if you found this video helpful, here's how you can help. If you're watching on Twitter, give me a follow at GDF on X. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to GDF. Please become a patron. Just look up GDF or go to patreon.com/GDFofficial. There you can join my Discord and follow news with all of us in real time. There's also several exclusive videos there. I also accept donations. But most importantly of all, share this video, like this video, and follow or subscribe whether you're on Twitter or on YouTube.
The GOAT, GDF, criminally underrated channel.